Welcome once again to The Sage, and thank you, as usual, for being with us. The last few weeks have been exciting, but they've also been very, very thought-provoking. We started this series by looking at our collective action within the past few months, particularly the 2023 national elections that took place. And we on The Sage reflected deeply and came out convinced that that election was actually a triumphant one in which this country, in which all of us as a people made a great deal of achievements. We talked about what we felt were the 5 to 6 major achievements of that singular event. We talked about the fact that, in fact, it was probably the greatest demonstration of patriotism in recent times for this country. The way we all came out with a single mind, with a single objective of making our beautiful country a much better and stronger one. How we demonstrated that in the wish for new and better leadership, in the numbers with which we came out and voted, in the youth movements that sprang up across the country, and so many other things. And so, yes, history indeed bears us out that a lot was achieved and that we can never turn back on those achievements. And so the series you're watching, move on from there. Having demonstrated the love of our country in the way we tried to vote, we do need, as a group, as a collective community, as one nation, to continue to do our utmost best to make our country a great country, because it is a great country. And so on The Sage, we started looking at various aspects of our nation, our nationality, and we began the discussion on what can we do? What should we be doing today and tomorrow to continue the work we have started? Because in the final analysis, it doesn't matter who governs or who doesn't. Our common and steadfast objective is that our country is a great country and that we all need to work to ensure it reaches its full potential, to ensure that the majority of our people in this great country indeed benefit from the common good. A few weeks ago, the past few episodes, we started with young people. Our young people in this country made us proud during the elections we talked about. They came out as never before. And so we discussed how, moving forward, should the spirit, the fervor, the hard work, the passion that we witnessed amongst our young people be sustained and indeed increased in the weeks, months, and years to come. We cannot turn back. We must continue to make progress. And so in this episode, we again discuss a very, very strategic and vital aspect of our collective community and nationality that needs to be fostered, recognized, strengthened in order that we build a great country. And so today, it's such a pleasure to discuss the issue of family. the issue of the strategic importance of the family as a unit, as an entity in our nation building. Why? I think the answer is obvious. The family is the bedrock of any society. Strong families build strong communities, which in turn can build a strong nation. It is the family that our young people first learn moral and spiritual values from. The family gives meaning to their lives. The family is indeed the centerpiece of any society. When you think about it, it is from the context of family. It is within the context of the family unit that we all begin to evolve as human beings who grow up and interact, hopefully, in a positive and social manner in a society. The family is so important. It is the first platform on which a child, and indeed any human being, learns to relate with its world. And so to discuss this very, very important topic, it is my pleasure to have on set with me today a wonderful young woman who it's been my pleasure to have on the show before. And because I listened to her in the previous episode, and indeed have interacted with her on a personal level for quite some time, I have admired her passion, her integrity, her unshakable belief in issues of ethics, issues of family, issues of morality, and how, despite her commitments, her many roles, she gives generously of her heart, her time, to the concept of family, to the concept of community. And a great deal of what she now spends all her time doing is centered indeed around that. And so I quickly snapped her up. I want to tell you that we are privileged to have on the stage today a really, really wonderful lady. Stay with me. When we come back, I will unveil our treasure to you. Thank you. Welcome once again to the stage. And thank you for coming back to be with us. Before we went for the intermission, I was just about to unveil our treasure to you. Our privileged, our guest, our special guest on this show to discuss the all-important issue of family. Please join me as I welcome Dr. Inya Ode to this show.
Thank you, ma'am.
You know, I feel particularly triumphant in having made her to come back to the stage. Dr. Ode, I will call you Inya from now on. Yes. I like informality.
Inya is great. I love that too. Yeah.
Has been a guest. We've been privileged to have her before on the show. And I never forgot some of the things she discussed in that particular group discussion we had. And some of it hinged around the issue of family.
True.
And remained with me. And so when we come to this issue of strategic role of the family in nation building, you were a natural choice.
I'm honored.
Inya is passionate. She's a young woman, a young lady who puts passion in everything she does. When she believes ardently in something, she is ardent about it. She's somebody who places a great deal of value on ethics, issues of morality, issues of good motherhood, issues of supporting, counseling young people. All of it come as critical elements of the family. And so, yes, you were a natural choice. Let me say, for the sake of our viewers, that Inya is a broadcaster, an event compare. She's a humanitarian, in fact, a veterinarian by profession, strangely enough, but essentially a development enthusiast, somebody who believes in development, who believes in supporting people, empowering people towards a better society, a better community.
Yeah.
She carved a niche for herself as a celebrated on-air personality in radio broadcasting in Nigeria. She was the host of the popular radio show Let's Talk Abuja and the Midday Dialogue on 95.1 Nigeria Info Abuja, indeed until November 30, 2020. I hope it wasn't the COVID that stopped it.
No, not at all.
Today, Inya is the head of the new media unit at the Luke Stera Leadership Foundation, a wonderful foundation that does many, many wonderful good things.
Yeah.
Perhaps someday we will have the pleasure of also having them on the show. But today, Inya is here in her own capacity because of her deep knowledge of social issues, of family issues, and the way she's devoted her life and her time to indeed advancing those issues. Inya, you're very welcome to the Sage.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'm honored and really humbled to be here. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
We are the ones that are getting. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to do something a little wider than often I do on the Sage. Many times on the Sage, I do bring people in and really get their opinion, listen to them as they talk to our audience. Today, I will co-discuss with you in my capacity as an old woman, as a sage, but seriously as a mother and a grandmother,
Right.
and one who has also, I think I share many similar passions with you when it comes to building our society and building our world. So we will bounce off and discuss.
Sure.
I have talked about the fact that family is indeed the bedrock of any society. But even before I ask you to also comment on that and give your own impression, tell us what you think about the family as a unit, as a family in the society. Let's start, I think, if you will humor me, by discussing the family in the context of Africa, in the context of the African culture.
You know, when we say family is everything, family is really everything for us here in Africa. I believe it's the same thing for the world, you know, in different parts of the world, though at different levels. But then we realize that the family is important. The family is the nucleus of society. The family is the smallest unit of society. And that is important because that's where birth happens. That's where children are born into. You know, a child is not just born, you know, like that. A child is actually born into a family. And that family is where that child learns, that child grows, that child is nurtured, that child learns how to care for others, that child learns how to share, that child learns what love is. You know, that's what the family is. And in our society, in Africa, I think no matter how poor a family is, that is important. That the most important thing is that we are together as a family. We have food to eat, no problem. We don't have, we're okay. As long as we're together, we keep struggling and then we keep going on. But we still hold ourselves very, very tightly, and we hold our values very dear. And that's another thing that comes out of families. Values. What values are you learning? What values are we teaching as parents, in the family? And that's where a lot of values actually come in. So besides what our religions teach, besides what Islam teaches or Christianity teaches, you also have the family that teaches you, okay, this is right and this is wrong, all based, of course, on our faith. So there's so much happening in that African, in that African family, in that traditional family, that, you just can't throw away and say, well, the family doesn't matter anymore. I know in these days it's a bit confusing. People have all kinds of values. People have all kinds of thoughts about families. People have been betrayed, maybe, by family members, and they say, well, no, I'm not dealing with any family member again. But for us, family is family. There are things that definitely happen within families. I mean, there are conflicts that happen within families. But you see, what is a family without resolving those conflicts? And that's why in our traditional space, in our spaces as Africans, we still hold that family unit dear, because it's everything. Really. I mean, I have my brothers, I have my sisters to run to, I have my parents, I have, I have my in-laws to run to as well. I mean, it's a close-knit thing, and you just can't throw that away. And I think that's one thing that we still have in this part of the world, that we still have, that makes so much sense, and gets us going forward. That know that, no, you have your cheerleaders, you have your cheerleading team backing you up, and you have that support system. Support system, very important. If we don't build that support system, then we lose it. Because at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, it's that support system you need.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. You made such very, very important points. But even before we expand a bit more on that, let me just say that I think because I'm older, I can still remember a bit more of the older villages from which we come as Nigerians, and from which, again, a great deal of people in Africa generally, and, come from. For when I think of my grandmothers and my great-grandmothers, in fact, for culturally, we existed as a people because of the family.
Yeah.
Everything in the village or in our community stemmed from the family. There. I remember something that people say, colloquial language in Nigeria, where you say you don't have any home training. If you misbehave, you don't have any home training. Because for all of us, training actually, in terms of good behavior and bad behavior, is a major responsibility of the home.
Absolutely.
In the traditional African culture, in the villages, everything was home-centered. If it was food, it's a home thing.
Yeah.
If it was education, it is home learning.
Yeah.
We teach the new generation is taught by the older people.
Exactly.
We hand down stories, we hand down traditions, we say what is allowed and what is not, and so on and so forth. So for the African in particular, I usually insist on that. When I worked for many years abroad, I tell them that in the African culture, family was everything. We have reverence for elders.
Yes.
Again, because of that.
Exactly.
We respected the knowledge they had. Again, because they handed down knowledge, tradition they preserved and handed down, and so on and so forth. Care, like you have said, is family. Whether it's care of the young or care of the elderly, it's a family responsibility. Yeah. And indeed, that's why in our socialization context, we also say extended family.
Exactly.
Family is everything.
Yeah.
Nuclear, extended, whatever. It was all about family.
And one other thing you mentioned that, going back to how things were, was that a child is not just a child of that nuclear family. Everybody looked out. So if I did something wrong in my friend's house, I would be scolded by my friend's parents. And the parents of my friend would actually tell my parents what I did. And then my parents would, do the needful. My parents would do the needful. So it wasn't just about my family.
Yeah.
It's also about all other families around, that there was that connection. So you are guarded wherever you go. You're guided, and you're like, look, I can't misbehave here. If not, my parents will hear about it. And then
you will be dragged by the ear to your
parents. Right. My parents would hear about it, and I would not want that whooping back home. So I would actually tame myself and guide myself wherever I am. And that actually helped in building a lot of us, really, and to show that close-knit family. So it's not just about your own family, but also about other families around.
So that what you and I actually saying is that family, your own family, they all come together to form your community.
Absolutely.
And communities come together to form our country.
That's it.
That we're saying that the bedrock of
every
what
society.
We call society, country, nation, is that
it's still
family.
That family.
And therefore, for any country, any nation to be healthy, most of the family units still need to be healthy, because that is where it starts.
Very true.
And that is where it is sustained.
Very true. As we said, that's where values are taught. So if you don't teach right or wrong, or you don't show right or wrong, this is not just about teaching, because parents are very good at saying, okay, so don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, or do this or do this. But then the example is what the child learns from the most. So if you're telling a child, go and read your book, you need to read, and then the child never sees you holding a book, the child is like, okay, so I'm supposed to read, but all right, so where is the example? If you're telling the child, no, don't do this, don't smoke, don't drink, don't do this, don't do drugs, don't do that. But then what is the child seeing from the parents? What's the child seeing from the adults around? What examples are we showing? So it's not just about, learning the right and the wrong. It's also about showing the examples to say, look, this is right and this is wrong. You're telling a child to obey all the regulations in a country, for instance, all the rules and regulations. And then you have your children in the car and you're breaking a traffic light. So what exactly are you teaching that child? That it's okay to do so. So showing, I think it's much more important than even just speaking and saying, do this or do that. Showing the examples and teaching those values, because it's from the family. The child learns those values. And if that child learns the values, they would know what to, expect on the outside.
I think, again, that is so important. And for our viewers, I think Inya and I are in full agreement about the very, very strategic role and importance of the family in our nation building, in our nation. Stay with us. When we come back, we will discuss on, so now we have agreed it's important, but what is the situation today? We'll be back. Stay with us.